My name is Gabriel Mukele, and I finished my university, Dar es Salaam, in 1967. Took up a job in the government, Attorney General's office.
At his home in Kakamega County, 76-year-old Gabriel Mukele reminisces about the early years when, as a young lawyer, he joined what was then a novelty, a commission specifically charged with the job of conducting elections in Kenya.
In 1992, when I was practicing here, the government felt that they needed 2 lawyers with the experience to help Chesoni. He wasn't having it very good. The late, my brother, Chesoni, and Kiwit was taken from eastern side, I was taken from western side to join, and that strengthened the commission.
That general election in 1992 was the first one following the return of multi-party politics in Kenya. The commission's chairman, the now deceased Justice Zacchaeus Chesani.
Kenyans have got to get away from this influence from outside countries as to determine how we can run our elections in Africa. These are strangers. They don't ask us to go and provide them the boxes to use in other countries. Why should they dictate to us what boxes we use? I mean, if we are satisfied, the electoral process belongs to Kenyans, and it is Kenyans to determine what to use.
Chesoni was a judge, first and foremost, and he liked his job as a judge. That's how he ended up being a Chief Justice. He was very independent in approach, made his own decisions. But just before we joined with the Kivitu, there were people who were thinking that he was not on one side or the other. They thought he was favoring the government of the day. But in my view or my opinion, he wasn't favoring the government of the day. He just did his job within the context of the law. He was...
This election came on the back of political agitation by the Forum for Restoration of Democracy, FORD, and other civil society groups, forcing the then KANU administration to open the doors for multi-party politics.
Sio kusema kusafisha na kuna FORD ndani yake. Kitu mimi nauliza nyinyi leo, ili tuone hawa walio katika siasa, wale walio watumishi wa serikali, sisi tuseme kwamba tufungue, tuondoe ile section ya katiba ya Kenya ya 2A.
A sigh of relief swept across the country, but many observers were still concerned that the Commission's 21 members, together with its chairman, were all appointees of the president. President Moi easily won re-election in that vote on the back of a sharply divided opposition.
My message today is that in a struggle, persistence and patience is what pays in the end.
The opposition loss in that election revived the push for a new constitution. Top on the agenda was the desire to have a fairer electoral system. But in the run-up to the 1997 general election, a majority of opposition politicians broke ranks with civil society to form what was to be known as IPPG, which came up with minimum reforms ahead of the election. One of the outcomes of the talks was a provision for opposition parties to nominate representatives to the Electoral Commission of Kenya.
And at that time, the commissioners who were there before were accused of being biased in favor of the government. Now, when we came in, and we were lucky because we met the late Justice Chesoni, we sat with Chesoni, the 10 new commissioners and the 10 old commissioners, and we agreed that we have to look at the country. We have to look at the law as it is and implement what is required of us per law. And actually it worked very well. 1997, we had some logistical problems, but the election was okay.
Humiliated by the second electoral loss in a row, the opposition elements stepped up their campaign for a brand new constitution, which they felt would level the playing field. That is how the Constitution of Kenya Review Commission was born in the year 2000 through Parliament and constitutional lawyer Professor Yashpal Gai, appointed to head it. The commission later merged with a parallel one that had been put in place by religious leaders and civil society under the Ufungamano Initiative. The 27-member commission went around the country collecting views from Kenyans, a process that culminated in the convening of the National Constitutional Conference at the Bomas of Kenya in late 2002. But Parliament was soon dissolved to pave way for a new election, a move that robbed the Constitution Conference of members of Parliament who constituted 1/3 of its composition. The country would once again go for an election without real changes in the electoral laws. But that vote that swept KANU out of power is to date regarded as Kenya's best election yet.
We were not thinking about who is KANU, who is Fort Kenya, who is what. We were working as members of the Electoral Commission, and we delivered a very, very good election.
The NAC government enthusiastically embraced the Bomas Conference as the talks resumed in 2002. But the process soon became a casualty of the political wrangles that had by now boiled over within the coalition, as Raila Odinga's LDP accused President Kibaki of reneging on their pre-election agreement. In March 2004, the Kibaki delegation walked out of the Bomas Conference as the two sides of the coalition disagreed on the proposed power structure. The document was passed nonetheless, but Kibaki's team quickly pushed through major changes in the draft, setting the stage for a contentious referendum in 2005.
They came up with a draft constitution, which was basically called the People's Constitution. It never saw the light of the day because the forces for retention of status quo held the state, the instrument of power, and ensured that did not happen. And that's why we rejected that draft constitution. The people rejected the one which had been manipulated because it was not a people's constitution.
Kibaki's side lost.
Some cabinet members who were NAC felt that the government lost the referendum because the ECK had sort of favored the opposition, which was wrong because we were only referring the process.
The referendum debacle and the poisoned political atmosphere primed the country for its ugliest election ever.
I think the government of the day wanted a second term at any cost, with respect. And the commissioners who had been preparing for the election, most of them retired, almost all of them.
The worst thing that was done by the NAC government was when they disregarded the 1997 IPPG, which required that commissioners should be appointed in consultation with the political parties. That was a gentleman's agreement, and that was the fault of the 10th or 9th Parliament because they didn't put it into law. It left hanging as a gentleman's agreement. So after losing the 2005 referendum, some senior cabinet ministers came and said there is no law. According to the law, the president is supposed to appoint commissioners. And that was the law, actually. So they deviated from the agreement of 1998, rather, and appointed commissioners.
A minister called me 2-3 times sending people that I go and see him. And I said, this is an election year. How do I go alone to see a minister? We go as a group of people, there's nothing wrong with that. Or he sends somebody here, or he comes here, it's a public office. Later on, the information I got from my brother Kiwitu is that they thought I was a stubborn person. Eh? And then, of course, I was retiring. I wasn't sacked. I was retiring in October, in the middle of October. And many people who came in looked as if they were one-sided. That was the feeling, the perception. I'm not saying they were bad people or whatever it is, but Kiwitu somehow felt he was left not quite properly backed up.
Those commissioners, those new commissioners who were appointed could have been appointed anyway because they are professionally competent, they're senior people, reliable people in the public service. They could have been appointed, but they missed up one thing. They did not inform other political parties. So by the time we came for elections in 2007, ECK had been discredited, and to me, it would not have mattered what we did. We were already discredited. We were seen as commissioners of the government and doing the beating of the government.
At the end, when the election came, the country was divided.
Come the voting day, I visited a polling station at about 5 in Hall Gardens, the Hall Gardens School. When I got there, I discovered that the officials had been blocked even having access to the polling stations by some agents. I pleaded with them, they allowed them to go in, but that was as far side that people other than the officials are taking control of the polling stations. Coming on the Mombasa Road, the place was awash with the flyers, these papers, betraying Raila Odinga as Amin in Amin attire and all that. I picked one of those things, I brought them and gave them to the officer in charge of KICC. As I was coming in, I got a call from Tony Gajoka, who was telling me Raila's name is missing from the register.
At first I thought that it was maybe just a minor omission that they would be able to find it. But they couldn't find it on the printed register. They couldn't also find it on what they call the black book. So in the end, I could not vote at first.
As I got to IICC, Raila arrived with the media to tell me now, look, you people, you have deleted my name from the register. I said, Mheshimiwa, that is not possible. In the meantime, I had called our officer at the head office, the officer in charge of registration, and he had confirmed that the name of Raila was on the register. Perhaps the possibility was someone went and checked on a wrong stream, because there were streams in Kibera, you know it.
When I arrived there, I found the place completely sealed. It was like a military barrack. I could not enter. Nobody was giving information. So then I decided to go to the headquarters of the Electoral Commission, which was at the Anniversary Towers. And after a long effort, eventually, I was allowed to vote, maybe after about 3 hours. So from that moment in time, I knew that something very serious was afoot.
But the real trouble was yet to come.
And we have reason to believe that some of the figures you are reading here are the same figures that have come from the bill.
Soon, the KICC would be the theater of a protracted dispute, as the opposition complained that something fishy was going on with the tallying.
I was forced to go physically myself to meet with my agents, who, as you know, had been denied access to the tallying center at the KICC. These were former members of parliament. Some of them had been in the cabinet. But even in despite the fact that they were very senior individuals, they were not allowed access to the tallying center, which is actually provided for in the Act and in the Constitution. So I went down to just find out what was going on and to see if I could assist.
Commissioners were the ones going to announce the results. Now, one of the commissioners went to announce the results, and the entire ICC said, no, we want Kivuitu to come and give the results. Kivuitu moved in to give the results, and as he was giving the results, someone stood up to say that the results Kivuitu was giving from Molo are not proper results.
When the Molo results were being announced by the chairman, there was an increase of 25,000 votes. So the returning officer protested, and we took him to the chairman of the Electoral Commission, and we told him that here is the returning officer. He is actually disputing the figures we are announcing. At which point there was a commotion. The chairman took off with his staff.
That is what blew up. That fellow was an imposter. He had nothing to do with Molo. But here he was being introduced by one of the very senior person in a party to say this is a returning officer who is coming to certify that the results actually Kivuitu has given from Molo are wrong results. So that is one of the things that really blew it up. From that, the parties requested that we go for the audit. We spent the whole night doing the audit, and having also witnessed what was going on audit, I was a little taken aback. The audit showed some errors. And if you followed me very well, I think I gave a press conference on 30th to say, yes, we have noticed some omissions, and given an opportunity, we are going to address them. At that time, the country was on fire.
The chairman of the commission then, the now deceased Samuel Kivuitu, remained defiant to the end about his role in the election, whose outcome occasioned the death of more than 1,300 Kenyans and the displacement of at least 600,000 others.
Explain simply and ask Mr. Kivuitu what went wrong from where you sit. What would that answer be?
Me, I don't know if anything went wrong. I will say so. I do not know if anything went wrong. And that's the law is there, that if something goes wrong, go to court.
Is this big enough to show on camera?
It fell on South African Judge Johan Kriegler to unearth the mystery of just what went wrong with this critical election.
There was massive unhappiness, widespread from way up north, from Lodwar all the way down to the Indian Ocean. People were convinced that there had been major rigging.
In the end, even Kriegler could not make sense of the massive confusion.
Gotten from Mundurwa market. So they're not supposed to be in one box. They're supposed to.
That was the 2007 election result.
They were so bad in their data collection and in their data transmission and in their data collation that one could not find out what had actually happened.
The result was the disbandment of the Electoral Commission in 2008 and the establishment of a temporary body to oversee a transition in Kenya's election management, IIEC. Its chairman, Isaac Ahmed Hassan.
Before IIEC was established, we had a very large commission composed of 23 commissioners, ECK, and they were appointed by political parties based on their strength in parliament. If you look at the IIEC, the commissioners were reduced to 9, and the way we were appointed again was through a very competitive process. There was public participation. There was a lot of goodwill at that time, political goodwill, social goodwill. The public and the political class and the media and the civil society and the international community were supporting the new institutional formations of IIEC, IBRC, and the Committee of Experts. At that time, we were drafting the new constitution.
The IIEC immediately won the hearts of many Kenyans as it ran efficient by-elections and pioneered greater use of technology in the transmission of results. The 2010 Constitution birthed a new dispensation that did away with the IIEC and replaced it with a more permanent Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC. Armed with a new constitution and great optimism in the country, the Isaac Hassan team embarked on preparations for the 2013 general election. This will be the most complicated election in recent times. 6 elective positions up for grabs, a logistical nightmare in the face of an expectant population. Unlike the 2007 election, whose contested results ended up in street battles, death and destruction, in 2013, the dispute went to the corridors of justice. And for 2 weeks, Kenya's young Supreme Court played host to a breathtaking legal epic, the fate of an anxious nation. In the end, the petition came down to one sentence: case dismissed.
Petition number 5 of the consolidated petitions is hereby dismissed. Petition number 4 of the consolidated petitions is hereby dismissed. As to petition number 3 of the consolidated petitions, the prayer by the petitioners seeking a declaration of recomputation of percentages by the second respondent is declined.
The major claims were that the Jubilee Party had shared a server with the IEBC, thereby manipulating the electronic results.
And if you're sharing something, a space, even if it's just a room where you're collecting results, if you're sharing that space with one of the contenders in the election, it makes it very difficult to view you as an objective body.
Even though the claims were never completely argued in court owing to a legal technicality, they continued to taint the image of the IEBC and provided easy fodder for the opposition coalition CORD to push for the replacement of Hassan's team. That fight famously acquired the name Machozi Mondays to signify the huge quantities of tear gas that the police used every week as demonstrators marched outside IEBC offices across the country, demanding the resignation of its commissioners.
I think it was a very difficult time for the commissioners and for the staff. It was a very bad thing to do. I think we decided to sacrifice institutional independence, security of tenure, rule of law, for political expediency, for peace. Yes, you have got the right to protest and picket, but I think if you are trying to achieve unconstitutional means or unconstitutional result, I think there was a duty on all of us to say no to that.
In the end, Hassan and his team were forced to quit following a deal brokered by a joint committee of parliament.
We decided to avoid a confrontation, a political confrontation. So we looked for very quick, short-term gain, short-term solution. And that was, I think, our exit. I'm not sure whether the problem has been solved. Yeah. Well, let's wait and see.
The new law has now reduced the number of commissioners to just 6 and a chairperson.
We need to look at other countries and see whether we want to stagger our elections into county and national elections or parliamentary and presidential, and separate some of the elections. That may help in easing the difficulty of managing the elections. But until we do that, I think we are going to be expecting our staff, our IEBC staff, to really be overworked during those critical times.
Several months after leaving office, Hassan believes that Kenya's bitter electoral disputes are far from over.
I think we may need to do a reform of our system of government. This winner-takes-all system of government, and loser takes nothing. It's not conducive for our kind of society. I think we may need to have a system which makes it more inclusive of other community, of other people. So it may be necessary at some point to review our constitution, our system of elections. I think we have got a bloated parliament. We may need to also review that. But the key thing is actually the politics, the government, system of government. If we are able to make it more inclusive, societies feel they are represented in the government, maybe it may help stabilize the politics of the country.
Many of the men and women who have handled Kenya's election story say the road ahead is full of promise, but hard work as well. Now the IEBC is in the hands of a completely new set of commissioners. Those who have walked this road before say they can yet make it worth their while.
The journey of managing elections is always a very difficult one, but also very satisfying sometimes when after you have done, everything is over and you have declared and people are celebrating their wins. I think and the country is moving forward. You have helped in delivering a government to the people. You have helped in delivering a county government, a county assembly, a national assembly, a parliament, a senate, a presidency. So that gives you a sense of joy and satisfaction, even as you are being crucified elsewhere.
Joageo, KTN News.